G'day guys, anybody out there? Hello. Good to see a few faces there. Hi guys, first one. Sort of a new start for me anyway, so it's going to be interesting. How's the audio coming through? You're mucking around with the audio, trying to get things to sort of look half decent. I've been mucking around with different sort of platforms, but you know. Thanks for letting me know. At the emissions around here. Adam well as me. Oh, well, you know, has a few emissions here and there, now and then. Yeah, look, I don't have a mic. I've just basically got the built-in basically mic. So, you know, as long as it's not too too much of an issue for you guys at the moment. Am I coming across okay? Hold on, give me a sec. How's that coming across? That any better? Does that sound a bit better now? Thanks. Yeah, I know it's going to be a bit like that, unfortunately, until I get a better microphone and a few other things. I've got a webcam at work, and I need to bring it in back home because I was actually somebody else was lending it. So until I get that back, and sort of play around with it and trying to get all these things to sort of work a bit better. It's going to be a bit like that, but I hope it sounds half decent. Anyway, guys, any questions on any issue whatsoever? You know, it can be basically anything from climate, whether it's you know, certain things of history, agriculture, whatever, that it may have an influence on diet and lifestyle and stuff like that. So, you know, just go for it, whatever, or issues that people want to bring up or discuss. I think it's actually a good idea. I actually been promoting on Bart's and discussing about the pulsatile effect, and actually that you don't want to be in ketosis continuously, but you don't at the same time want to be either in an anabolic state continuously. So that's not a healthy way. If you look at traditional societies, you look at the background society, they have something like 200 days of fasting, where there's either, you know, complete fast or, you know, time restricted, like breakfast and nothing else, or you know, there's also things like Ramadan where they don't eat through the whole day and they just have time restricted. It's more like time restricted feeding, that sort of style. But it's actually really important. If you look at the Okinawans and people like that, they have a saying, eat until you're 80% full. So they do restrict calories and nutrients into the body, and it is important to give the body a rest. It's like sleep. Fasting is basically whole body sleep in a sense, where it gives the body relief to basically go away, do some repair, clean, take out the garbage, so to speak, out of the cells and out of the mitochondria. So, because there's always, whenever there's activities where the body's actually involved in, burning carbs, fats, reactive oxygen species that come out of that process. Now, obviously, with that, there are less compared to glucose, but you're still going to get some byproducts. As a consequence, that you really need to basically have this pulsatile effect to basically clear out the garbage and recycle that stuff, and actually then, and it also it depends. A lot of latitude dependent, and I mean, in future I'll be doing some bits on not only on depleting deuterium and the importance of that and metabolic water, but also looking at things like light and our photoreceptors throughout our body and how they work, melanopsin, the role of melanopsin in basically also the nutritional side. If you can actually get up to about, potentially up to about 2/3 of your energy from the sun, so through these photoreceptors, all our food actually stores light in some form. So, it's way more nuanced, but at this stage, in this general Q&A, we'll sort of focus on the key nutrients and all that most people understand. There's a lot of the sort of Jack Kruse and Laszlo Boris and people, for now some time, but a lot of it is actually quite complex biochemistry and also what they call quantum biology. And quantum biology is sort of a new sort of offshoot of biophysics. But the thing is, my approach and my criticism of Jack is basically that it needs to be made simple, for people to understand. Now, let me just go back up here. Hi, Alice. How are you? Thanks for joining. Yeah, I would have to say, if you take a look at the Japanese, when one of their emperors banned the consumption of dairy, and lactoferrin is an important growth factor, and also some the Japanese over a number of generations became much shorter. And if you look at basically North American Plain Indians, the Maasai and populations, because nutrition plays a big role. I've seen it in my own family where my father was affected by the Second World War and his father was affected, where my grandfather's brother was over 6 foot and his brother, my grandfather, was actually quite short, 5 foot. So vast differences because of nutrition and because of warfare. So, it plays a big role, nutrition, in height. And it takes a couple of generations depending on certain genes, and it's a bit more complicated. But yes, nutrition is fundamental to height, fundamental to the potential. I mean, if you look at the actual growth spurts of a child, those points at life where the actual child grows rapidly, is when they need the maximum amount of nutrition. And if you don't get the maximum amount of nutrition, you actually get certain bones not forming properly. And Paul Mason actually did a recent video that showed malformations cause hip problems in later age, and joint problems in later age. So nutrition is very important at critical moments in a child's development. So it's not something minor. It's very important. Yeah, they play a big role. It's sort of a combination of genetics and a combination of the interactions, also the epigenetic side, which is generational and environmental. So it's a bit more nuanced and a bit more complicated. You'd have to do it like I had, and some of this sort of stuff, and predispositions, and then consider environment and consider diet and other implications to really be able to say something specific about somebody or whatever. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you take a look on both sides of both the actual Pacific and the Indian Ocean, the actual temperature is much lower. It's actually cooler. And they've actually talked about it. And this is the disingenuousness and the actual absolute lies of the mafia, the climate change mafia, because they're always saying, oh, it's the increase in temperature in the oceans and all this, and it's going to create catastrophe for us and all this. Well, hold on. Dryness comes when you have less precipitation, when you have less temperature in, and you get less monsoonal activity. I mean, bloody hell, Indonesia's been drying out so badly, and I actually visit Indonesia quite often, and literally these massive bushfires through Indonesia, which is sort of a tropical. Our oceans aren't getting warmer around Indonesia or Australia. They're actually getting colder, and as a consequence, we're getting these massive dry spells. We've had both sides, both the Indian and the Pacific, much cooler, and as a consequence, that's what's dried out the continent and actually really made bushfires. But it's already that factor. There's also a whole lot of vegetators that have been fighting us tooth and nail to prevent a lot of strategic burning off. See, the continent of Australia, North America, are two places where fire was used extensively by indigenous populations, massively altered because of fire. And if you don't use fire, you actually end up growing these unusual forests that are much more vulnerable to burning. So traditionally, when colonial people came to Australia, they actually noticed, if you look at the old drawings, and even paintings that people painted, there were grasslands, massive forests, which are unusual. We're not allowed to basically burn. Aborigines don't do it anymore, and as a consequence, we build up a lot of fuel that's, just much easier, in a continent that actually dries very easy. And on top of that, we've got overgrazing because nobody wants to kill kangaroos anymore. The indigenous population now just eats out of the supermarket. And unfortunately, nobody's keeping the numbers down. And so, overgrazing, the drying out, all these factors are just making the whole situation much worse. But try to argue, and it's like the cute furry creatures. You try to touch them, and you're in danger in this country. Well, I've always had an interest in a lot of different diverse things: history, physics, all sorts of areas. So, we're not going to discuss M theory now or anything like that. That sort of nonsense. But I do have an extensive areas. I was reading philosophy from the age of 15, and writing articles in one of the newspapers. back then. But anyway, that's a different, complete story about early life. We may discuss a bit about my early life some other time. Thanks, mate. Ah, Pim. Hi, Pim. Good to see you. Ah, a few other people here as well. Bart's here as well. Well, exactly. Actually, up at Byron Bay, there was actually a bit of an incident where the local council there actually barred, sort of the sort of burning that we need in the winter months to basically keep the actual fuel down. Decision, and sort of walked back a bit. But this is the disingenuous of these people. Whenever they basically get into trouble with their strategies or their behaviour, they immediately blame someone else or create misdirection. The whole idea of these, you would think they were basically magicians, because that's how they operate, with misdirection. If you actually argue any time with a veg tart, what do? They're always changing the goalpost. They're always changing the question or the answer. They don't stick. They won't answer. Bloody these guys, are supposedly holders of truth. Well, it's a load of bullshit. I mean, people like Bart and many others have exposed these charlatans, and they just keep on YouTube and all these other environments keep on regurgitating these nonsense speakers. Oops. Exactly. Nothing. It's just another way. Parallel universes and all sorts of things. There's no observational basis for it, and even some of the recent observations are actually sort of putting all this into question. It's just what else are they going to come up with next? I'm just wondering. It's just absolute nonsense. Yeah, well, pretty much about it. Yes, that is a cesspool of veg tards, unfortunately. But actually, I do get my ghee from there, which is a nice thing. So you do have vegetarians that produce really good ghee, and that's one of the things I actually cook with. So I won't bag them completely. They may deny me access to it. Yeah, I know a bit. I know a bit. Probably Bart's probably far more knowledgeable in the area. I mean, I know just general stuff in regards to it. I'm not an expert in historical stuff, like looking at the Maasai, looking at the North American Plain Indians. How they were able to build very robust, big bodies on buffalo meat. So some of those anecdotally, and I have looked at some research into how to improve your muscles, like using whey 30 minutes before. It's a fast absorbing amino, and also I actually think that combining also that with taurine, especially if you're older than 40, because taurine synthesis declines in 40. It really rapidly drops after 65. And maybe because it would improve efficiency, maybe older people that older people should consume more protein because they don't absorb as well. Maybe if they had more taurine, like my father has in his get supplemented by me, maybe that would help. But there's no research. I haven't seen any real good research to basically look at people over 65 and combining taurine in a randomized control crossover study where somebody's doing placebo doing on that, and then they cross over just to basically confounders, because certain people do have slightly different genetics, and that can affect as well. Myostatin is one of them. Extreme types of myostatin. You can become a bodybuilder from a young child, but it can be damaging as well. But there are a number of genes that are involved, and if you only get expressed a certain amount, it's probably that shows the difference between some people that can really build body, big muscles quicker than others. So there's genetics, there's the way people absorb the different macro combinations, the micronutrient or deficiencies. It can become quite complicated. Oh, yeah, liver's pretty good. But mitochondrial function, I sort of look at when you're eating a diet which is low in deuterium, so your nanomotors are actually more efficient. So you're actually being able to, produce ADP synthase, more efficiently. Carnivore type of diet really help. How well you can deplete is latitude dependent. So if you're further away from the poles, indiscretions, you can pay for them severely in terms of mitochondrial function, because you can't, without UV, you can't deplete deuterium and maintain good nanomotor performance. The damage you can cause by the type of oxidative phosphorylation style, whether it's glucose based or not, so it's those variations as well can be important if people have got a lot of there's a number of issues why you may need it. One is certain people like myself, I've got a SNP that doesn't actually, I can't produce endogenous choline. I need it from some source, whether it's from eggs or liver. So that's an issue for me. And also from synthesizing, I've also got the SNP really poor synthesizing, of that, but also the conversion between choline and folate. So I need folate as well. For the other methylation pathway, I can't convert. That's blocked as well. So I've got a double block in my genetics. So for me, it's and also choline-rich foods like eggs and liver is probably less of an option. It's a requirement, but that's not for everyone. So there are different genetic reasons why somebody may need certain things for better functioning of their body. So it's going to be nuanced, and it's still a lot we still don't know and still learn. Sort of the protein gradients through fumarate hydratase via complex 2 within the inner mitochondrial membrane. That's also important. I sort of have a belief that, as long as that gradient, sort of maintains a sort of level between 100 parts per million of deuterium up to 100, you still need some growth in there, because otherwise, it becomes too catabolic. And, you can, with, severe uncoupling. So it's complicated. Pim, as you probably know, I've made it probably a bit too complicated for everyone else as well. So I will explain a number of these things in future videos. So you'll have to bear with me. I need to produce more stuff as Bart keeps on reminding me. And, thanks. I have to really thank Bart, because he sort of exposed me to the YouTube world, pushed me, kicked me, trying to get me to produce a few things and do a few things and get online and you know, and it's important. I mean, we need to get the message out that, you know, these misanthropists, vegetards are basically trying to pollute food supply and actually ban, you know, species appropriate foods. And so we need to do something about it, and we need to step up. And that means including me. I need to step up. You know, I just can't, you know, hide away and say let somebody else do it, because, you know, we need numbers, unfortunately, you know, and numbers will play a big role. Absolutely nothing. Not yet, anyway. And I haven't decided what I'm going to have tonight, or whether I'm going to have anything, or whether I'm just going to fast right through until midday tomorrow. So I may actually do that, you know. So, you know, once I switch off food for quite a few hours, I, you know, lose interest. It's quite sweet, from what I've heard. I've never tried it, but you know, I've actually tried a different type of, like the water buffalo, which you find in the Northern Territory in Australia and you find in Indonesia, but I haven't tried the actual North American, you know, that sort of buffalo. They say it's quite sweet. I'd like to try one of these. Get access to it. I've tried to search for it, but I can't find any supplier in Australia. If anybody knows, please email me or leave a comment so I can actually look for it, because I would like to try it. That is genetics, you know, certain people, you know, so there are genetics involved in that. So, and probably Bart would know better if he's still here, could probably answer that. You know, and it also has to do with how much, what sort of, there's all of things, how much you need of any, really depends on a lot of other factors as well. Whether there's a specific number, and there's also variations in terms of synthesis as well. You know, those sort of aminos that get synthesized, there are variations. As I said, I can't synthesize certain things. Also, with age, taurine synthesis goes down. So there's a lot of variations. There's a whole string. You know, you can't really, you can give multiple answers to that, you know, and you'd still probably not satisfy exactly. Actually, increase, the more you've got, you'll actually increase muscle. So, but if you've got too much, you know, if you express too much, those people that have got that genetic predisposition can actually have heart issues. So, you know, those people probably need it, but the rest of us that have a lot of building muscle mass may need a bit more. But, you know, I would rather think that nature knows best, and I wouldn't really try and interfere. We've interfered far too much and caused far too much dysregulation in people's lives and destroyed our life. You know, process. You know, what we need to do is get the species in appropriate foods, especially the highly processed garbage that's out there, out of our diet, and that would you know, probably deal with 90+% of most of our ailments and problems. They pretty, that sort of, it is a rough environment and all that, and it's, I mean, a lot talked about the Inuit and I mean, a lot of people have discussed also the SNP that they had, that they can't actually get into ketosis very easily. That's not all of them, but that's a large amount. The ones that are closer, I remember looking at a Canadian site, which actually I couldn't be able to find it because I didn't actually save the link, which genetic SNP, and actually it was much further north in the much northern parts. And I think there could, I've actually mentioned this to Bart, and he actually sort of thinks that it's a possibly good hypothesis. My hypothesis on this is that the SNP exists not so much because ketosis is so catabolic that these people, I mean, other populations have high meat diets and very low carb and, you know, still manage to be ketotic for many months without any problems. So, and you still got a few Inuit that don't have this SNP and they survive quite well. They don't become extremely catabolic and die out, you know, in that regard. So, you know, I think that it's probably due to deuterium. I think because you can't, you're so that there is so little UV to deplete deuterium, which damages the nanomotors. Too many neutrons going into the actual nanomotors as it rotates, damaging and reducing efficiency. Could potentially, you know, put you at risk of cancer and all sorts of other degenerative diseases. So, in terms of mitochondrial dysfunction, so it possibly, my hypothesis is that this SNP exists for primarily for the purpose of basically allowing more fat oxidation. So we can use the byproduct of that, the metabolic water that is depleted in deuterium, and displace some of the water that the Inuit would be using, which is ice water, very low in terms of elevation, and also in a latitude that also has very low UV exposure. So it is much higher in deuterium. So there's a fractionation of water depending on the height, depending on, you know, there's a lot of these factors. How much it gets affected by UV of deuterium. I think actually and those people have adapted as a consequence. It's a tough life, but these are hardy people and strong people. And, you know, even though they encourage their kids to do even smoking from a very young age, you know, when it came to cardiovascular disease, all these sort of diseases which we call disease civilization, it didn't have them. They didn't even have words for them. So it tells you something that the diet, a species-appropriate diet, even when you're doing some indiscretions like smoking and things like that, can be quite protective. Vitamins play a big role. You know, there are actually, you know, collagen-degrading enzymes in your lungs and around your body and all that are actually regulated by fat-soluble vitamins. You know, so retinol, D3, MK4. You know, this is one reason why, you know, veg tarts and others fall apart. So keep that in mind. And because one, an adaptation, all that, bagging ketogenesis and using the Inuit, say, well, there's a deuterium angle. You know, just nail them with that because they're just bloody ignorant. And even Chris Master John, he actually makes this remark about the Inuit and says, how sugar is so important. Bloody hell, Chris. You know, stop going down the reductionist path that you're going and basically try processes that are happening in the human body, and then you may basically have an epiphany like I had. Thanks, mate. Yeah, thank Bart. He was the one that kicked my ass and tried to encourage me. So yeah, thanks, Bart. See ya. they pursued you know, this is another reason why we started cooking, to extract more calories. I mean, you have to read 11,000 years, our environment was quite constrained. You know, we had to go into greater effort and, you know, walk quite a few distances in order to access animals and fatty animals. It wasn't enough to find fatty animals because that was our primary energy. So, you know, as a consequence, we weren't eating constantly, you know. That's why we used to feast. We used to go through these stages of feast and famine, you know, this sort of pulsatile effect. So, you know, we don't do it now, but when we do it, we end up a hell for it. Somebody send some burgers over to me. I will improve. Yeah, I'm going to get a new microphone. Yeah, I will, because it's, yeah, a lot of people. Hopefully, that will improve things. Thanks, mate. Any more questions, guys? Did I miss anything? If I've missed anything, I haven't brought it up. Just basically just retype. I've had some internet issues earlier today, so yeah, could be, that's a possibility. Unfortunately, you know, I can't really do much if MBN Co. There are issues. So we've had a few issues around here. I had about 2 months ago issues as well, not working properly. Yeah, so sometimes certain things can't be helped in that regard. Look, vitamin E, something which, if you look at all foods, they have a certain amount, all animal foods and all that, to stabilize PUFA. You know, it's really not required in such a large amounts. I mean, okay, you could actually get lipoic acid, or you could use certain other types which actually recycle both vitamin E and vitamin C. But you know, I mean, you could basically, you know, if you want to increase your antioxidant status, I did a vid, just my first one, which was on the chromium and certain chromium-rich foods, which actually upregulate GLUT4 receptors in the cells, uptake of vitamin C. You know, but I wouldn't actually be supplementing either vitamin E or a lot of the vitamin E sources, unfortunately, are from seed oil type derivatives. You know, so I wouldn't touch that crap. You know, and if you're going to use any vitamin E, I would actually use probably something which is palm oil based or palm oil derived, because it actually has a much between the of E as well. It's not, you know, just alpha tocopherol and just that. So it's really important to consider that, and it's more, I consider as a good protocol. So if you're coming off a high PUFA diet, and so you've got stored PUFA both in your cell membranes and your mitochondrial membranes, and you know, in your fat cells, and eventually that sort of free fat acid, these guys and Robbie and they all go hark on about, you know, that this, when you go in ketosis, this sort of free fatty acid. Yes, traditionally we would have fattened up on animal, you know, fat and seasonal fruit. And so the sort of stored stuff, we would have had very little PUFA in our diet for what the body requires. But unfortunately nowadays, because of inappropriate diets, we've had far more. And so because it takes about 4 to 6 years for turnover and some level of clearance, I've always recommended a low dose vitamin E, which is derived from palm oil. The only company that I did know that actually produced was Jarrow. There may be other companies that may actually produce a product of that. What was hard for me, quite a few supplements more. I avoid seed oils and PUFA like the plague, basically. So, you know, that's sort of an option for you. I don't know what your circumstances are and where you are in your you know, journey in life, away from the sand stuff. Me. So all I can say is that would be your best option for 4 to 6 years, and then basically, you know, or you could basically get palm oil, get an organic cold pressed palm oil, and use some of that in that transition. You know, that'd probably even be safer in one regard. So, you know, I mean, I hope that's helped a bit. Yeah, it's pretty much that, you know, and then there's genetic differences. There are genetic differences. You know, I mean, I've got certain genes where I can actually put on muscle much easier. I've actually looked at the SNPs through a 23andMe sort of genomics, but you know, and other people it's much harder. But you know, consume protein, you know, it does help. That's just the reality of things. Some people have tried to mitigate it with steroids, but you know, steroids cause so many problems in the liver. I mean, yeah, okay, you're taking steroids and you can take milk thistle and a few other things that can mitigate slightly that damaging effect, but do you really want to harm yourself? Is it that important, you know, to a barbarian? You know, I can't see the value because I can't see it, but you know, teach to their own. No, I'm not. You know, I just basically think that, you know, people are easily corruptible. There's profit motives and things like that. There's no conspiracy. I mean, you know, if you've actually seen some of the I've actually spoken about these things, that how the technology which came about from the Industrial Revolution and the ability to basically extract, you know, the oil from seeds and all these other things, and that there was good profit margins, and people saw it and people jumped on that bandwagon. So it's not a conspiracy. It's more that things are done. It's like, you know, today with a lot of, you know, people say, oh, you know, if you look at all these low carb stuff and all that, well, you know, Atkins bars and all that, they're all, you know, it's cheap stuff, ingredients and all that. There's a lot of stuff in there that, you know, questionable, but there's good profit margins in it. And that's why, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want good, nutritious food, stay away from anything that's packaged, you know. But unfortunately, people like the convenience. And we've had this sort of convenience since the 1950s onwards, after the Second World War. We saw a lot of packaged stuff starting to emerge, and a lot of these new processes and improvements in technology that came out of the war that made it possible to basically do these things at a lower cost base. And that's what happened. And then, you know, we had policies to basically increase industries. And, you know, I mean, that's a problem. Humans are always going to look for the profit motive. You know, business people and things like that. So it's not really a conspiracy. It's just that basically, you know, and sometimes also you've got cognitive dissonance, you've got the other issue that people will jump onto a bandwagon. They'll have made a whole career behind it, and it's really difficult to extricate yourself once you've done that. And so there are a whole lot of reasons like that. I mean, if you want to call a conspiracy something that, where people are avoiding and hiding things and all that, yeah, you could call that, but that's been happening since antiquity. It's nothing new. I think they're pretty good. As a vehicle, they're pretty good. And it depends on the Sarah actually, that Bart had Sarah on, and she's really up to liposomal. That's where I learned a lot about liposomals. And she's the person that be asking these sort of questions. The thing I've learned is that than nanometers, and you definitely don't want anything over 150. It's useless, as she points out, and she's right. There are certain types that I've actually investigated, and I've contacted the companies where you can get them right down to 30 nanometers, certain liposomals, and they've both got allopoic acid, they've got glutathione ones, they've got a couple of other ones like vitamin C, but why would you bother? So there's a couple of brands that produce them, different types and different versions. And when I look at those sort of things, I sort of say to people, well, if you're going to use those things, it's because you've really got some deficiency or some issue you're dealing with. I wouldn't waste my money on too many products. Organ meats, I mean, look at Terry Walsh, Dr. Terry Walsh. I mean, she basically had MS and basically just hit a lot of the organ meats. She was so depleted from a vegetarian diet that she basically just hit all these, and that really recovered most of her health. Really just made everything possible for her and got her out of a wheelchair. So I say at the end of the day, nutrition is, if you want to accelerate the thing, you can use some certain supplementation, in that regard, or to correct something. I think a lot of them are a waste of bloody money, good money. Look, it can be in the case where it's made it quite clear to me that I have certain pathways, MTHFR pathways, methylation pathways that are basic. So I need folate, I need choline, I need these things, are very important for me. They may not necessarily be important for others. I mean, if you've got a background which is like, let's say, a Han Chinese, well, 76% of the stats that I actually looked at, this is not all the Han Chinese. It's just 76% of them basically can produce endogenous choline. So they can. So if they consume more methionine, they can do that. I can't. And there are many others that can't. Where when we look at Northern Europeans, it's only 9% or 9.1% to be more precise. Europeans is about 4 point something, I can't remember now. So we've had more animal products in our diet, both Europeans, Central Asians, Northern subcontinent people, and people in other parts of the world like Africa and all that. So as a consequence, some of these things have been down-regulated because you've got basically the people of the British Isles, a lot of them that were consuming a lot of cod liver. Well, beta-carotene conversion dropped to nearly nothing. That's why vegetarians that come from that part of the world fall apart within months. There are things. So it's know these things, the vulnerabilities you may have, and it just means that you can actually optimize your diet. So you can basically say, well, oh, okay, muscle meat's not going to do it for me completely, or I need to consume slightly more in order to get maybe I don't want to do that, and an option is having a bit of liver to basically sort of balance that out. You know, it's each their own how you make those adjustments and how you customize your diet. There are other foods that you can combine as well that have got these rich in the seafood area. So, you know, it's another thing to look at. It's like copper, for instance, you know, that's another one. As I said, gelatin, squid, fish broth, octopus, you know, those sort of things are pretty high, so you don't necessarily have to eat liver. So if you want to balance out your zinc and copper, you know, there are other foods, you know. I actually think that most populations have type of food continuously, and they will see some stuff. You know, so there are variations. So but then again, there are people that have got genetics that probably can do it. You know, but it's one of those hard things. Actually, what is C60? I haven't heard of it. Maybe is this a supplement or something? So it's a potent antioxidant. Yeah, look, I don't know enough about it. You know, I can't comment in particular. But you know, intracellular, you know, antioxidants like glutathione and things like that. You know, CoQ10 and things like that are, you know, if you're on a carnivore diet and you're consuming certain foods, you should be fine. I don't see. You know, none of the indigenous populations, unless you've got severe deficiencies. I mean, I don't know your circumstances, Deborah. You know, if you've got severe deficiencies, you know, like Terry had, you know, maybe you need more of these sort of things. I would say side and try things like you know, into your diet. With that, get your butcher, mince them, and combine them with muscle meat, and make it more palatable for yourself. Focus on food rather than too many. You know, there are certain aminos that are, you know, like taurine. Yep, I think that once you get over 50, you really should consider supplementing to some degree. You know, so there are certain things. It's just because, you know, obviously you could consume more protein to basically, because of the lower, say, well, okay, I'm not gonna take this amino transporter. I'll basically try and actually overload myself with more you know, protein in my diet. You know, so that it's really up to you. It's your body. The way you go about it is your issue. You know, so you know, if you want to ask an additional question, you know, go right ahead. Of, you know, possible combinations of what you do and what you may like to try. That made me laugh. You'll have to wait. Yes, I will actually put something like I'll ask questions of. I'll put a thing on my channel just asking people whether there are any topics that they want me to research or look into, or I may know about and want to discuss, like in a video, do a video in particular. Yep, you know, you know, and even if you put stuff like after this video live stream, if you put anything in the comments area and all that, you know, I will answer it. And if I don't know enough about it, I'll do a bit of research as well. Well, fibrinogen, basically, or fibrin, you know, you can actually exercise helps, sulfur helps sulfonation. So the glycocalyx, basically sulfonating them and having a negative charge. If you want to reduce clotting factors, earthing yourself, things like that, eating a species-appropriate diet, which basically doesn't cut those. And because remember, glycocalyx, when they hit by sugar, they'll collapse for 6 hours. Bacteria, lipoproteins, and all that have this pericellular matrix. They've got this little hairline structures. So you bombard them with advanced glycation end products with shitloads of sugar. Well, not going to be a pretty picture, in there in terms of bloodstream, functions. But strategy. Apparently, if you look at some of the researchers in the field, at night, because of the change in both the spectrum of light, but also in terms of the magnetism of the Earth, there seems to basically be more therapeutic effect. So, I mean, you could literally earth yourself from the outside and put a little wire around your ankle, one of your toes. I mean, that's another hack. I mean, I think Bart does actually that. He puts a thing around his toe. I'm not sure whether he still does it or not. You can actually buy shoes with soles that basically have basically earths you to the ground like an indigenous person that lived out in nature all day. So there's a lot of biohacks out there and stuff like that. I'm just waiting because I'm an office worker. I work on the 9th floor, so I'm just waiting for one of those devices you can put around your wrist and actually mimics the same effect. But I haven't seen one around. If anybody knows whether somebody's invented or created one or selling one, let me know. I'd love to buy one. Oops. I'm very much an eclectic person, libertarian in some ways, other ways, a bit conservative in other ways. I'm very eclectic. I'm not really one thing or another. So I sometimes agree with my right-wing friends and my left-wing friends on different things, and even on the same issue, I can have conflicting views. Generally speaking, I don't like to lock myself into a specific way of viewing, the world. It's Harry's way, not, some politicians or this person or that person. One thing that I've known in nature, one reality is always negated by another reality. Somebody that knows a bit of dialectics and I mean, the world in continuous flux and change, and entropy just keeps on changing the yard post continuously. So, you've got to be flexible. You shouldn't basically just be with, stuck to one view. There are more than one way of skinning a cat, and sometimes a more efficient way. So I think be a bit more objective and a bit more critical in the way we tend to like to be tribal and follow the leader. I'm a maverick. I don't follow anyone. I just follow Harry. That answers your question. Yeah, pretty good. It is. You need choline to transport fat. One of the best ways is fatty liver to basically transport it out of your liver. Yeah, choline is really good. It's perfect. If you've got fatty liver as well, you could use milk thistle as well to repair some of the damage. So that's your two best options. I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to quantum physiology, but there's areas that are still, there's question marks on them. We still don't have good enough research. There's some anecdotal evidence, there's some inferences, but yeah, it's a complicated arena, let's put it that way. And you know, and sort of like, for instance, water molecules will hold energy. Okay, so you've got a negative and positive hydrogen, and you know, even light sources and electromagnetic fields will actually, you know, build that capacitor battery, because it's a capacitor battery type thing. Some call it a battery, but you know, question is interference from other factors outside, the gradients. Nothing's been really measured. It's really, there's a lot of grey field in that field. And so, you know, I say to people, you know, if you stick to nutrition, you do some of these things that we know actually work. You know, if you earth yourself to the ground, we know, you know, platelet aggregation drops. You know, you're basically, your whole endothelial cells, you know, that whole structure, your arterial system works way more efficient, pressure drops, all these sort of things. So we know that there are positive things and they've been measured. The question is, some of the other stuff out there, you know, we'll investigate these together in the future, and there'll be more science and more information coming out, and I'm still looking into more of that area. But let's do the same mistake we've done in the past. We've found one thing, and then we've had this reductionist approach where we've just jumped on that and just magnify it, because that's what people like to do. They take one little thing and they magnify it, and that's not always the best thing, because that, you know, at a certain band, it's like, for instance, deuterium. You know, at a too low level, it's unhealthy. And as long as you're in that band, you're pretty good. And there's a lot of other environmental factors around. Let's not jump the gun on some of these things, because it's very easy to do that and end up going down the wrong pathway. Okay, I'll look into it and try and find out a bit more about it. No, I don't need them. You know, so, you know, even my latest cardiology check was really good. So, you know, I've seen regression, and basically the bypass, you know, so it's functioning properly. So there's no, progressive, no progression. It's gone the other way. So why spend too much money on these sort of things? I mean, if I had a specific thing like, you know, Bart had his eyes and, you know, certain things, if back at the time when I had the situation after my surgery and all that, yeah, I probably would have taken it, to be honest. You know, that was part of my body that was actually, you know, damaged quite a bit, and it probably would have all gone into that area and done quite a lot of good. You know, and it probably would have saved me a whole lot of money on a whole lot of other interventions, like alipoic acid, all these other things, and organ meats and other things like that, to try and actually correct a lot of this sort of deficiency, sort of using PQQ for you know, mitochondrial biogenesis and all sorts of other hacks. You know, so I spent a lot of money on other things. Maybe this would have been a quicker way. So, you know, I suspect it would have. You know, I mean, you know, faith and stuff like that. Probably the only person I would probably discuss that would be with Bobby or a person like Tristan, but you know, everybody else, I just keep my faith out of it completely. You know, while you know, I'm an orthodox, at the same time, you know, I'm an empiricist as well. So I don't see one of them, but I pretty much stick to, you know, diet and stuff like that, and those sort of issues, and nutrition, and how to optimize and actually improve our health. That's what my focus is, sort of a no bullshit approach, and giving people a bit of a historical perspective on some of this sort of stuff. And if you've seen some of my other material, you've probably known that that's been one of my strong points in looking back to understand how we got here and how we can mitigate certain things that we've actually done to ourselves. I bet you don't. Well, you digest acid in your stomach as well actually denatures the proteins as well, breaks them down. So, you know, I mean, you know, you're absorbing fatty acids and amino acids and stuff like that. So it's breaking down all that stuff anyway. You know, the high acidity of your stomach. You know, there are particulates of the cooking process, high doses, you know, can cause problems, but you know, small amounts. I mean, they were rat studies, irrelevant. You know, show me a human study. There's none. And you know, you've got millions of years of you know, cultures, 1.5 million years of, you know, cooking. So I wouldn't be too concerned. You know, as I said, again, reductionism. You know, one little thing. You know, we've got a rat study here, and then we just make a big edifice. You know, irrelevant. A lot of factors. You know, obviously the main culprits. You know, high carbohydrate diets. You know, a lot of fructose in there added, and a lot of other indiscretions that people do. But there are other factors as well, that basically, how much exercise do you do? What sort of sized muscles do you have to basically store more sugar? You have sufficient choline, or the ability to synthesize choline to basically export fat out. So, and you know, do you get enough zinc to basically, you know, for your beta cells to basically function properly, so they can actually, you know, they're zinc dependent, you know, insulin production, you know. So, you know, all these are factors. Chromium absorption, not only of vitamin C, but also those GLUT4 receptors, also glucose efficiently. So yeah, it's a bit more nuanced, but you know, the key culprits are obviously, you know, too much sugar, too much engaging the Randall cycle. You know, all food combinations are fructose, PUFA, and refined carbohydrates. You know, that gradient really up there. So, you know, that's what drives it. Overloading the system, and the body just goes, I've had enough, give us a break. That's what pretty much insulin resistance is, in a sense. You know, people get confused with that with basically peripheral resistance that you get on a keto diet, or all that. That's just to basically spare glucose, which is far less in the system, and it's demand driven to spare it for basically, you know, some of the functioning of your brain, and also for your red blood cells. So in that regard, but really, again, you know, these sort of diseases are, you know, diseases when people are not eating species-specific diets. That's what happens, you know. You know, just, I always say sometimes it's you know, and people say, well, I could use metformin. Yeah, but metformin also creates deficiencies, you know, mineral deficiencies and other deficiencies in the body and other dysregulation. So, you know, do you want to do that to yourself? So there are the pharmaceutical approaches to so-called by another way of poisoning or dysregulating. So probably to go. Good for you. Put a link for the rest of us. I mean, me too, pretty much. I'm very much eclectic. I mean, as a youngster, I sort of traversed a lot of areas. You know, I even was, you know, an atheist. I was writing in an anarchist periodical, and I actually published a scathing anti sort of Christian manifesto at the time. But anyway, that's a long time ago. So I mean, I'm far different compared to that young man, but a bit more nuanced about a lot of things in life, and you know, even stuff like that. I have a better understanding how these things come about because of topographical sort of topography plays a role in the way culture, the way people behave, and the way they trade amongst themselves and develop their societies. You know, the type of, because it affects where rivers form and it affects how civilizations form and all sorts of things. And then, you know, so it's a much more complicated picture when you go back and look at how things evolve forward. And it's very easy to just sort of jump at this point in history when you don't have any previous understanding of the past. And so you say, oh, this is something new. You know, it's a bit like the first, you know, most people, I'll just throw this in there. Most people don't realize that the first oil war, we talk about oil wars now, the first oil war was between Persian group. First oil war. Remember, they used to use olive oil to light up it was used as a way of providing light for the cities. That's what oils were used up until we used oil lanterns and stuff like that. And we used it basically from whale oil and all these different other oils that we derive for the same purpose up until electricity. So we've been having oil wars for a very long time, you know, and that was the whole thing, that the Greeks controlled the trade and the Persians wanted a cut of the business, you know. So it was, you know, they invaded, as the empire then invaded the Middle East, which was Greece at the time. So they got their asses kicked, you know. But you know, that's, you know, so that's the problem with history. A lot of people don't really know the real history. They know there's certain characters, there's certain things, and there's certain events that took place, but the real story behind a lot of this sort of stuff. And so once you realise that, and you realise the bullshit and everywhere else, you go, oh, yeah, you know, you become, I don't believe any of them. You know, I believe in direct democracy. To be honest, you know, that's my only political belief. I've always, to set up a party, I'd set up a party just to destroy that party, just to create direct democracy, and then I would liquidate the party, you know. So if you really want to know how I think humans, if they're educated enough and they've got enough intelligence, they'll do that for themselves. That when, you know, it's only when you've got propagandists like they had in ancient times that destroyed the republic, the democracy at the time, which was basically the aristocrats created this class of orators. We call them the media today. So they were controlled by orators who instruction with with the actual Spartans in war. Well, we've got a whole lot of orators who are called the media, and they just want to make money off our misery. So it's the same thing, you know. The quicker they die out, the better for democracy and the better for the rest of us. Oh, run by Frank. No, I haven't actually. I've a political channel as well. God, I mean, bloody hell, meat channel, political channel, his general channel. How many fucking channels does he have? No wonder he doesn't get any sleep. You know, I mean, if you've got so many damn channels, more than you can poke a stick at, you'd never get any sleep. No wonder he's so, you know, sort of edgy. Salt, easy. Salt, you know, a bit of yoga, just you know, sit out, earth yourself, sit out in the sun. Exercise also lowers cortisol. You know, it does increase, but after that, it sort of drops off. You know, your endorphins increase. You know, you feel better and all that. As long as you don't overdo it, excessive. Nothing's good excessive. You know, so seed oils. We've talked about this yes, full of seed oils. You know, if you really want to poison yourself, remember seed oils. Your deuterium should be between 130, which is olive oil, and 102 is where omega 3s are. You know, fish. You know, sources of fish. Most tallow are sort of in that middle band of 110, 115, around there, tallow, lard and stuff like that. So these seed oils are well over 255 in some regards. So they're just basically mitochondrial poison. Consume seed oil like there's no tomorrow, you know, and add sugar to that, which is very high as well, specifically fruit. You know, fruitarians, you know, what do they think? They fall apart. It's the worst carbohydrate in terms of deuterium. It's got the highest amount because it concentrates. The plant concentrates deuterium in the actual seed, in the actual plant, the fruit itself. And so, you know, the leaves have got depleted, deuterium depleted because of UV radiation. So that's why some tribal people, like the Samburu people, what they do is they get an ostrich egg, they get all these leaves, and they actually press on them and squeeze out all the liquids into the actual ostrich egg, and that's their sort of water while they're moving through the arid environment that they live in. And that's how they provide themselves with good hydration. I do some breathing exercises, you know. I actually have noticed I can actually more rapidly by doing that by faster actually consuming extra salt. So, you know, but it's, you know, sort of that deep breath, you know, your diaphragm and all that sort of. So there's plenty of stuff on the internet. People can search for it and find it. Good questions here. My view about religion is it's a belief system. It's, you know, obviously it's not based in science. It's not possibly even based in much historical evidence in many regards. There's probably, you know, like myths and legends, there is a foundation. Now, whether, you know, looking at the anthropic principle, there is, you know, how can I put this? The universe seems to be quite ordered in some regards, and even terms of you know, the randomness, you don't get complete disorder, and so has it put together, you know, because if you know, it's one of those really hard questions to answer. I mean, I don't think any human could, and anybody that tells you they could, they're lying to you know. So in a sense, religion is blind faith. So yes, I do probably have a bit of blind faith, you know. I have to be honest, you know. So, you know, I sort of balance it out with the pure other side of my nature. I'm eclectic, remember. It's a lot of factors that can actually raise cortisol. It's, you know, quite a few numerous ones. Your lifestyle, people around you, excessive compulsive behaviors, too much exercise, psychological problems, eating species inappropriate diets that basically make you more agitated and more, you know, I mean, you know, the GABA levels are going to be different between somebody having a high sugar diet and somebody having a more species appropriate diet. So there's a lot of factors that are at play. But I think that if you can improve your environment around you, and you can basically, you know, chill out, learn to basically, how can I say, learn to listen to people, and also learn to basically communicate. In many cases, a lot of people in life are going to have this, are going to be suffering similar issues because of the frictious nature or whatever of us humans. So it's probably a good idea to speak to those people and try to understand where they're coming from, and for them to understand where you're coming from as well. So, you know, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, you know, so that, you know, take that with a grain of sand. Yeah, there's a lot of factors, both lifestyle and dietary. Yeah, it does. It does. It's a, you know, you could call it a biohack to stress. Oops. Yeah, pretty good. I have a positive view of it. Actually, PQQ, that one of the best plant-based sources is actually chocolate, but it's full of oxalates, which is the downside of the damn thing. I mean, like, you know, stearic acid, palmitic acid, you know, these sort of the more saturated long chain fatty acids, they tend to induce a return electron transport through complex 1 within the inner mitochondrial membrane. And so they send a signal to, you know, to basically encourage the body to create more mitochondria to deal with the energy in the system. So I think if you're having a speed, you're getting good sleep, you're exercising and stuff like that, because sleep is very important as well for mitochondrial health. So there's a lot of things, a lot of factors. I mean, in the short term, I don't know what your circumstances are and how damaged you are, whatever. I mean, I was quite damaged coming from a sad diet, that I took this stuff for a while to basically improve my energy levels, to improve my body's, you know, capabilities. You know, now I'm 53 and I feel stronger than what I felt a decade ago, plus 20 kilos lighter, but that's another story, you know. But the thing is, yeah, it's I think they've got their place, but, you know, some of this sort of stuff is also in organ meats as well. Both those are in organ meats as well. So, you know, if you're deficient, but at the same time, you know, tend to have a lot of the organ meats tend to actually have a lot of minerals and stuff like that. So, you know, overloading yourself with too many micronutrients. You know, I think one other option, if you want organ meats more often, is giblets, like chicken giblets, or giblets from other sort of bird types, where you can actually get a much more, you know, it's all the different organs, and you can get a much, if you can do that a couple of times a week, where you can actually increase the amount of micronutrition in your body. But then again, you know, depends on your circumstances. I mean, I don't know enough about you to basically form an opinion, but you know, it has its place. If you want to spend the money, go right ahead. I haven't read his books, so I've got no idea. You know, maybe he's trying to justify his 4 hours of sleep. You know, because he's got so many YouTube and so many other social media platforms that he's trying to support. No, look, you know, I have genes. I sleep probably about 6 to 7 hours myself, and I have genetics that actually predisposes me to going later to bed. So certain people may not need as much sleep, you know. I mean, that whole area is very controversial, and there's no real science. So, you know, anybody, obviously, in probably 7 hours, you know, but there could be cases where other people need more. We know young children need more hours because they've got growing brains and developing brains. But, you know, there are other factors as well. You know, less sleep is a problem because the proteins need to be cleared out. More sleep to, you know, clear them out, to break them down, you know. I mean, so sleep's required, you know. Also, insulin degrading factors are also required for that role. That's another reason for dementia, Alzheimer's, and all that, with the insulin issues in the brain. But, you know, exactly how much is required for you specifically, whether it's 6, 7, or 8 hours, I can't really say. It's one of those things that I don't think we've got enough science. So if you feel better, I actually feel better with about 6.5 hours. When I actually sleep more than that, I feel really, you know, I don't feel that great. When I sleep less than that, I also feel lousy. So my sweet spot seems to be 6.5 hours, but for other people could be different. So that's all I can say on that. Well, that's good. You got a bit of you got a bit of UV, and you got a bit of grounding. Good for you. No idea, mate. Maybe. Maybe we should put them in a zoo. They'd like to put us in a zoo, you know. Where the awful humans that eat meat. They're a cult, remember? They want to basically, you know, create a vegan. That's their ultimate thing to deal with us meat eaters, sick little puppies. Yeah. Yep, they're in their own little world, you know, of extreme cognitive dissonance. And then they've got all the brain fog as well. On top of that, they can't see, you know. Yeah, they're really deep in the shit, you know. I'm an Aussie, mate. Tasmanian, actually. Hobart, Tasmania. That little island to the south of Australia, which is part of Australia. It's one of the states of Australia. officially within the Constitution. We are a state. Some of the others are just territories. But yes, it's a nice place. It's a bit like New Zealand in some respects. Has a very similar climate to New Zealand. Very similar environment. Even the sort of the vegetation here is quite similar as well. It's quite a nice place. I mean, if, you know, Google it. There's a lot to see down here. So, or on holidays. Did I miss any? Actually, did I miss anything? If I have missed anything, I do apologise. Just re-type it in and or copy and paste, and so I can actually see it. Because I don't have a Pim to basically do it for me. So, and Mira would tell me to take a hike anyway if she was here. You know, which are really hot, and then the rest is, you know, it's sort of yeah, it's not that fantastic. So yeah, through winter, I try to get to the tropics. So I fly over to Bali and try and get some sun exposure. But you know, it's a bit like that. You know, yeah. I sometimes do supplement a bit in that regard. Those fat soluble vitamins are very important in that regard. That's why you see more disease further away from the equator you are, historically. Okay, there's a whole lot of minoquinones. I mean, there's, you know, like minoquinone 7, MK, or terminology for it, 9, and, you know, it goes on. But a lot of these minoquinones, what they would do is, like, you need vitamin retinol and vitamin D3 to basically, you know, they're synergistically involved in certain protein that are required. It's just these little machines, because proteins in your body are all machines, okay? So they need whatever, but they also need activators. And what the vitamin K2 does for osteocalcin, it basically activates it. You know, it's got a little claw, little hook, can grab sort of calcium and just shift it into the actual bones in a very simplistic way, as a terms of an explanation. But there are differences. Now, a lot of people argue that MK7, we'll hear it from a lot of people, especially the veg tarts, they'll say MK7 is the most important vitamin K2. No, it's not. The only thing that MK7 does is basically activate osteocalcin. Okay, that's all it does. The proteins that basically, you know, are involved in the chelating role for calcium in the bloodstream. But if you want to get into your soft tissue, MK4 penetrates into soft tissue and actually remove that calcium. Calcification in your arteries, you need MK4. That's what you need. That's why all the studies that they've done on MK7 have really flopped. Okay, they've really flopped in actually showing any regression, and only some of the studies, like the Dutch studies and the Japanese ones, where they've used MK4. So what I used, you know, MK4. Protocol for mine. I'll discuss it in a future video in that regard. Now, MK4 also actually acts as a hormone. It has a hormone-like effect, very similar to basically vitamin D3. See, these 3 fat-soluble vitamins, retinol, and I use the animal terminology because that's retinol, D3, and MK4, they are collagen regulators. So the actual enzymes involved in collagen regulation these three are required to regulate those. Throughout different parts of the body, they're expressed higher or not, depending on the type of matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs, and these enzymes basically are the key things. So if you don't get enough retinol or whatever, and you come from an Irish background or whatever, you can get these sort of funny growths on your skins and stuff like that, little things here that are literally and that happens because people are basically overloading on vitamin C and stuff like that, and oxalates. You really need these animal forms to really regulate your these enzymes, these collagen degrading enzymes, and also keep them under check. You don't want too little, you don't want too much, and that's important. So the proper regulation happens in your endothelial cells everywhere throughout the body. In your lungs, it's primarily D3 that plays a bigger role with more of the different types of MMPs. Now, it's another reason why when you're further away from the from the tropics or places like that, you live in weather, you get more colds in the winter. Okay, because you're getting some degradation of those. You're not getting good repair and stuff like that, and and you're more susceptible to colds and flus and stuff like that. So that's why I supplement. In that regard, so it's very important. So when it comes to if you want to supplement for specific reasons or whatever, MK4 is your best. Or eat brie. I love brie. It's the primary menoquinone in that is MK4. Not much of the others. So Gouda is another one with good MK4 sort of things. Things like liver, eggs have MK4. Good stuff, will be protective for your body. So stick to those. You'll be fine. You've had a situation like me where you're trying to reverse and you're trying to basically resulfonate yourself and do all these other protocols, sort of things, extreme sort of stuff to try and actually correct my number of decades of indiscretions that caused my my heart disease. Well, you're probably going to be doing fine in foods that will give vitamins and look after your body pretty much and regulate it properly. So yep. You come and go, Pim. It's good to have you back. I use the same one as well. It has very little protein, very little carbs in it, so I can use it pretty good. And I don't use a lot, sometimes I think my only dairy, let's say my only dairy sort of indiscretion is basically raw milk. So I sometimes can be a bit of a pig when it comes to raw milk. So yeah, I have to be careful not consuming too much, especially when you're trying to lose weight or whatever. My actual field of expertise is in mapping, cartography, and IT. So that's sort of my background anyway. But I deal with a lot of data, data analytics, writing code, stuff like that. So I have a good understanding of how to basically deal with data. I understand when you got shit data, you're going to get shit results. And I can actually see the BS in certain data capture and methods and methodology that people have used. I wouldn't consider myself. I'm not. if you want really high level statistics, but I'm able to read studies and able to work out where the bullshit is and where they've actually failed in their data capture methods, and also some of the contradictions, where they're interpreting data in a certain way, and you look at it, the raw data, and you go, well, it's not actually telling me that. Basically, you're just basically being had. And I think that's the reason when I had my issues and I sort of started hitting the research PubMed and looking at all the research and trying to find out how I can reverse this problem that I created a decade ago. And I went down these rabbit holes. I started realizing that this is just shit data, so poorly, these questionnaires and all that. I said, who basically believes this crap? To produce a product from this poor data, God, it'd be a don't even buy it, But unfortunately, a lot of people have been buying this this Kool-Aid, this piece of dog shit, as I call epidemiology. It's so confounded and so problematic. Its capture method is just abysmal, absolutely abysmal. Anybody that relies on such abysmal data capture, so poorly done, completely incompetent, are being used. The average person that eats McDonald's to basically tell you what they actually ate exactly and what they did and all that. They've got no idea, I mean, God, and the average IQ, I wouldn't even want to ask. So, you're not going to get good science. Clinical studies, and when you do randomized control studies, you actually, you get a different picture. Yeah, look, I would not waste my time with junk science. And I don't think you need to be an expert in this sort of stuff, because the experts are so basically piss poor. I mean, anybody can really, with a bit of, if you use your brain, you're a bit intelligent, and you don't fall for the BS, you can pretty much work out a lot of things. Where am I? There. Just give me a sec, guys. Good for you. I'm just going to whiz a bit through these, and I'll come back if I've got time. I lift some weights, and I actually do a bit of walking, power walking. So, and sort of sometimes I'll just run fast and do like interval cardio and stuff like that, but short bursts and stuff like that. So it's all about putting the heart under strain and the body, but not doing it. I want my body to still be able to work when I'm 90. Very little. Me too. Where do I start on that? I mean, I mean, copper's a very important part of iron metabolism, but he's been consuming a lot of copper in his diet. I mean, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know, and I've got no idea really. I mean, there's nothing in the literature, as Bart said. I haven't seen anything. People have been doing these, like the Andersons for 20 years. So I don't really know exactly what Frank does, and so I can't really comment. It's like anyone. Anybody can say, "Oh, well, I think I've got this, but I think my relative has got that." And I go, "Well, I don't know your relative. I've never examined him. I've never looked at his blood works. I've never done anything. So, yeah, it's just, who knows?" He's done himself. He doesn't get enough sleep. Is that a factor? That's a hard one. Depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to lose weight, probably not a good idea consuming too much. You know, I've been pretty much weight stable on, and I'll consume, you know, a bit. You know, probably, you know, half a day. So, but every day, do all that, sort of a versatile effect. Yeah, hard to say. You know, it's where you are, what sort of exercise you're doing. If you're doing far more exercise than me, you're probably fine. It's too many factors. It's actually one of the fat soluble vitamins that are involved in the regulation of collagen degrading enzymes. So, you know, turnover and all that, and they, you know, and also, I mean, it does other things as well. You know, obviously, I've mentioned, you know, removing calcification from soft tissue. It has a hormone-like effect. It does a whole lot of things in different parts of the body. It's the only metoquinone, when you consume it, goes into every cell. Every cell. MK7 doesn't. All the other ones don't. It goes into every cell, and it's involved in all sorts of processes, including in the mitochondria. So, you know, if you really, and we don't fully understand all its functions as well. You know, I'm gonna do a video on that, and I'll go through detailing all the functions, how it works, and everything. Yeah, too many questions to answer, and that'll be in the future video. That'll be covered. You know, I think short fine. Long term, I don't think it's an advisable thing. I don't know of any tribal society that ever did long term dry fasts. So yeah, I wouldn't do it. But short term, yes, I've done dry fast for 2 days, but I wouldn't do it for any longer than that. Oh well, you're late, you know. I probably don't have that amount. I probably have you know, because I probably it sounds quite a bit milk, you know. Yeah, I probably only consume a small amount. I put in my coffee, so yeah, probably half a liter, maybe a liter. It's about it. It varies, you know, depending on, you know, when I'm on holidays and I'm at home, I'll probably consume a bit more than normal. Yeah. Average day, I go to work at night. I cook, and if I'm not fasting, I sometimes go around to my sister's place or to a mate of mine's place here or there. Sometimes just stay home. Sometimes just watch the occasional movie or whatever. Sometimes I play computer games. I like yeah, I mean, you know, when I'm on holidays, I'll do things like fishing, hunting, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not squeamish in that regard. No, not whatsoever. I mean, I started my first animal that I actually slaughtered with my father. I was about 8 or 7. And so I don't have an issue with it at all. I've grown around doing that sort of stuff, so not much of an issue. Yeah, I think I've always said one thing to people: the most valuable thing in my life isn't my money or my job. Life. That's the most important. I mean, a job can come and go, money can come and go, but the relationships are the most important. And at the end of the day, we are social animals and we need relationships. I mean, I can sort of do my own thing, and that's a good thing. You have to have some self-reliance, some independence, you know, not being a complete pest with other people. But at the same time, it's important to, you know, to value relationships and to dedicate time to them. So, and that's an important part of my life as well. So, I mean, I don't know whether that answered your question. I don't think I'm much different than many other people in that regard. Currently, I'm actually going to be trying to lose the remaining weight. So I've got about 8 years or that to lose, and then I'll be basically where I was when I was a youngster. Then again, do I really need to as well? I'm thinking about, because I know that the older you get, the older age you get, and all that. You know, having a few extra kilos can be protective. You know, from major disease or a major incident. You know, you can lose it rapidly, weight, and But yeah, look, I'm going to put myself into a sort of a ketotic state, and go a bit lower on the protein and all that, and sort of try and drive the remainder off, and go off dairy and all that, and try to, the next 6 odd months. But I don't know. I don't like rapid weight loss. I don't think it's a good thing. And each time I've done it, I've had to spend quite a bit over a year or two trying to basically, just skin again, tighten up. I mean, this now is really tight and it responds back quite well. But when I initially lost a lot of that weight, it became really quite loose, and sort of that's why those are so important. So I sort of upped a bit those, and sort of strategically sort of used high dose MK4 and stuff like that. Not only for that, but the consequence of that also had a positive effect on my skin, and so lipoic acid as well, and stuff like that. So call me vain or whatever, but there are consequences. So I sort of thought, do I go a bit slower this time? What my best strategy is going to be. We'll see. At the moment, I'm in that sort of holiday mode, and it's it's summer here in Tassie, so you get out, you have a few indiscretions, you go and have ice cream, things. But I do get good quality ice cream. It's all based from it's dairy based in that regard, without any seed oils or crap like that. So, but it's a bit more expensive, which is a bit of a bugger. But at least, so I'll see. Need to give up the ice cream. Damn. Yeah, I've been weight stable now for 3 years. So, I'm just, yeah, for another bout of weight loss or not, or whether I leave later on. I think from what if you look at even tribal populations, like, I think I showed on one of my things that I did on the, can't remember now, it was one thing that I did with Bart, and I think I mentioned, how even the Samburu, the Bushmen, they have such little belly. Having a bit of reserves is probably a good idea. Tribal people, considered that an important thing. Maybe they knew better. This really ultra lean, no body fat, and you notice people that really do that, have that extreme, actually are more susceptible to illness, and so maybe that extreme, yeah, it's the trendy thing to look like that, but is it a good idea? So maybe let the body dictate. Get on a species-appropriate diet, be seasonal, and let the body decide. So it may be the best strategy, the healthiest strategy as well. Well, at least it doesn't affect on you. Hey, but at least I'm not banging on your wall either. Don't really know much about the European. They include in their diets, and I couldn't really. Just haven't done any research. I mean, yeah, hard to say. I know traditionally, if you go back historically, I've looked at historical weightlifters and people like that. They did a lot of steak and eggs, dairy and stuff like that. But a lot of the modern people, what they do, a lot of them do a lot of variations, a lot of different things, and they. So yeah, I just don't know enough about them, and and yeah, maybe they do consume that sort of stuff. I really don't know. I haven't looked into it. Maybe I should. There's a company called Made by Cow. So if you type in there it is. I'll actually bring it up. Give me a sec. I'll just put it on the screen. Now, Chrome. Yep. I will share that. So that's the actual raw milk. It's actually use a cold pressing method. It's not like the North American one. Some companies actually use where they actually put it through the actual milk goes through the actual chilling system that actually chills it down and all that. And it's a different sort of process to get rid of the pathogenic bacteria. This is a completely different method. What they do is they actually put it into the bottle. So the raw milk goes straight into the bottle. It's not, handled. It goes from the cow to the bottle. So it's completely untouched by human hands. And then it's placed in this device. Now, that device, cold press. And what it does is it actually creates like an atmosphere which is 6 times of the lowest part, I think, of the Pacific Ocean, was it? They actually said. I think it was the Pacific. I could be wrong. And they've actually done. They actually sent it to a university and did some research as well. It's on the website. You can actually take a look. So if you put in madebycow.com.au, you'll find the site. They have a number of different products. That will come up. And so they've got kefir as well. So if you're into that. They've got some other stuff here, which is, coconut, strawberry. No thanks. But, if you want just plain natural or cold pressed is sort of the way to go. It's a pretty good product. It's very creamy. It's like, how milk was years ago. Very creamy. Obviously, it's not exactly like milk coming out of a cow. Okay. They still do take the cream off because they sell it. Most milk that will come out of an animal will be much creamier and have a much higher fat content. So you do lose part of that. But, in terms of the quality of the milk, having lactoferrin, which is good for your bones, it's not only for young kids that are growing bones, but also for older people that want to retain good bone health. So lactoferrin, it's got the enzymes. So if you've got one of the SNPs only, not both of the SNPs, because some people only have one of the SNPs, not both, for lactose persistency, like I have. So if you don't create enough lactase, you can get that enzyme in the raw milk. It doesn't get destroyed. So that will help you in that regard. And I mean, even if you look at the actual nutritional side, the profile is actually quite good. Hold on, is that coming up? So that's a sort of nutritional profile. And if you look at the actual, like the calcium levels, and you look at the vitamin, riboflavin, very important for the mitochondria, so 2 glasses, and you're done pretty much. So if you've got any vegetarian family, friends that are obstinate, and, get them onto it, at least basically they can improve and maintain their health to some extent until they come to their senses and come over to a species appropriate diet. So it has its values and all that. It's also got omega-3 fatty acids, so it's a pretty good source. And remember also, it's not only a good source of calcium, but also a good source of potassium as well. So, I mean, that is another thing. If you do consume a lot of raw milk and milk products in general, like the Maasai do, you definitely need more sodium. That's why they bleed their animals for that additional electrolytes. You do need, so you don't need as much potassium. And I will do a thing on potassium because it is much lower. I mean, I only require, for my frame, my body, my lean body mass, I require about 2100. And most people sometimes require less than that or slightly more, 4700. They don't require that amount. It's much less, and it's basically energy dependent. And it's a bit more complex. The RDAs were not developed for, the average person. They were actually developed by a committee, as Bart says, and they just basically came up with numbers that suited a certain high carbohydrate lifestyle. So, we don't need that crap in that regard. Anyway, back to it. Depends on your circumstances, City Organic, I get it. That's the only place. Umara used to sell it. They don't anymore for whatever reason. So City Organic in Hobart, they're the only parts. Yeah, I know there are a bunch of veg tarts and, vegans and vegetarians in there. I mean, the owner there, I get on with her fine. She knows that I'm a carnivore, so, she's fine about it. But yes, but you can put yourself down on a list. I actually have myself on a list because they bring small amounts and it gets sold. So if you want to basically guarantee that you'll get your milk, I get it every week, and so pretty much I've got my name down and they just order. They keep it in the back in storage. So when I go in there, I say, can I have my 2 bottles that are in back storage? And they pretty much know me now, and they just get it for me. Occasionally, when I've had too much for the week, I usually give the other bottle to my father. No idea, mate. No idea. I don't know what the laws are in North America, so I couldn't really tell you. And it is illegal in Australia, but this type has actually, because it's been by the university, it's actually allowable because it's the only raw milk that is actually permitted in Australia. So yeah. Just lost it again. Where was I? Keep on overshooting a bit. Sorry, guys. I'm still learning how to use this damn thing. My sort of view is that how can I put it? I think some of the actual people have gone down the wrong pathway. It's like and it seems like it's the same culprits. Back in the 1970s, some of the same people that were involved in the current sort of fiasco were actually telling us that we're heading for another ice age. and now they've jumped on the other bandwagon. It sort of happened at about the transition for some of these characters in the 80s, and they moved over, and it just seems like they're dodgy as dog shit, just pseudoscientists, a bit like your nutritional epidemiologists, are very much the same sort of thing. They basically just do shit in order to maintain academic tenure, and they bully everyone else, and they're in all these different committees and bodies and all that. The people that are doing good science are sort of squeezed out or pushed out or cajoled or threatened or whatever else. And I mean, when they actually did some, they actually found only people like work for different services actually believed in it, where when it came to certain academic groups and whatever else that are involved with IPCC and a whole lot of these other groups, it tends to be much higher the numbers. And the reason for that is quite understandable. There is a bit of politics behind it, but there could be also economic forces as well. And the sort of economic forces, like the Second World War, we had to build a new economy. After the Great Depression, we had to build a new economy. It could be that basically, there's no demand in the economy. Things are flattened out. We've got a declining population and all that. And this may be a strategy of creating new industries and getting the taxpayer to pay for them, so they can create, new potential profit avenues. So, that's how I see it. Because if you take a look at the corporates in energy, they tell you, well, all these other traditional stuff doesn't work. It's too time investing. There's more bang for your bucks. What they mean is they can build something like a solar or wind farm or whatever at a lower cost and make a bigger profit. And so in the energy sector, there probably is that sort of motivation, because if you want to develop, thorium reactors or, like molten salt for, or fusion reactors or stuff like that, it takes a lot of investment. That's why research always by the state. These guys just come in after and pick up and get all the actual rights to it and get the cream. They just innovators in products. They get us to do all the hard work initially and pay for it. And so, it's probably part of that. And so, they need their propagandists like the veg tarts and others to basically push that sort of line. It's always been about money. No conspiratorial. It's always been about money. Wars have always been about money. Who controls all that. We need to get over calling things conspiracies. They just are what they are. Wealthy individuals will pay politicians and get them to do their bidding and all that. And it's only when a population is, turns off, and they try to get us to turn off by getting us to be up and saying, oh, and as a consequence, then they can do what they like and, manipulate things as they like. And that's why I say, if we sit still and we don't do anything, we don't respond, what do you think on the internet? Do you think I'm this? No. It's because basically we need to stop like to ban things that we enjoy. So, yeah, it always has been about money, guys. I never make comment about a lot of people deliberately. It's just one of my things, If you throw stones, you're likely to get stones about anything, and I don't know what he's said recently, so I don't like commenting unless I've actually seen it myself, and I know, but, like I did say about Chris Master John, because I actually had seen some of his stuff on the Inuit, and I commented, and he didn't bother even replying. So, it's just the way it is. So I made a comment, I'm still subscribed to Chris, and I have a lot of respect, and he's got a lot of good knowledge, but he's still got some really bad ideas about sugar and a few other things. But maybe he'll come over to our side one day, you know, realise his errors of his ways. One can only hope. Yeah, calcium does affect absorption. You know, can bind and actually remove, and you know, so can have an effect. There's a lot of factors as well, other things in the diet, you know, that can combine. You know, it doesn't have the same effect like fibre and certain with the in that regard. So, you know, and anti-nutrients within, but it also has other. I think when you eat a lot of animal products, what you end up is with something more better regulated, and the body usually will utilize, you know, calcium in the any too high or whatever. So, you know, if you look at the mass side, they consume massive amounts, 3.5. You know, so there's a lot of contradictory studies out there, and unless we get some better science, you know, I usually just leave it and go. You know, if you're having a species appropriate diet, you're probably safer that way, rather than, you know, it's easy to basically make a comment. It's best sometimes to just say, well, we just don't know enough, you know, and leave it at that. Good for you. Yeah, can be beneficial. If you've got hemochromatosis or stuff like that, yeah, can be useful. So it depends on your circumstances. Also, stuff where it can have benefits. It's a bit like, you know, the hormetic effect, where you take something and has a hormetic effect on your body. It seems to basically, when you donate blood, it seems to basically, you know, upregulate all these pathways to renew and create new red blood cells and a whole lot of other things. So it seems to have beneficial effects. So I would say, you know, maybe that's the reason why women with, you know, they actually get an advantage and a few extra years over us. So there's probably some good benefits in it. Is there really solid, good science? Mixed. But I would say there is probably a bit of a benefit to it in terms of some longevity. But you know, the jury's still out on some of the things. You're welcome. I've got a lot of issues with smart meters and EMFs and all that, because remember what I said earlier about water, which acts as between its, you know, two poles, you know, the hydrogen between, it acts like a battery and like a capacitor, because they can actually discharge quite easily. And the problem is these these fields can interfere in the functioning, and so I do have a lot of concerns. The problem is we don't have good science. We know that these things have an effect. Electromagnetic fields have an effect on our bodies. All that, there's still much on it all. I think if you've got a species appropriate diet like ours, even, you know, the tight junctions within the mitochondria, they'll actually stay more tighter with saturated fat than looser. So, you know, you'll get better water and fats. I think appropriate diet, we may be able to function in a higher EMF environment far better than somebody in a high carbohydrate diet, which is far more inflammatory. So, but until I see good research like randomized control crossover, all we can do is basically we can infer from some anecdotal evidence, military evidence as well, and some of it actually is quite concerning. I will do a video in future, and I will be looking at EMFs and radio waves and radars and all these sort of things and how they affect the human body. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff, especially that the military did. Source, you know, wanted to know. So they would, you know, they didn't have an axe to grind. You know, stuff coming out of the telecommunications industry and other things like that. How much can you trust it? Here's the thing, especially when you see stuff that coming out of research done by the telecommunications industry, and it contradicts some of these earlier studies done by the military. Basically, rely on their military studies. They just wanted to know how to mitigate things and how, you know, what it could cause them, you know, for in terms of performance of their troops or whatever, their airmen and, you know, things like that, their crew on their ships, you know. So it's another reason why when ships come in to certain ports, they turn off their radars and stuff like that, because they know they can cause a lot of interference and problems with telecommunications. You know, they know that it has an effect on different things. One of those things, I think they are a problem, but how, you know, it's hard to be certain. So my sort of idea is to, you know, just I'll point out some of these old studies and some newer studies, and then basically talk about some mitigation strategies. But, you know, if you're on a species appropriate diet, you're going to be a hell of a lot further ahead. And this is probably one thing that I sort of, you know, with jet crew, where it is, well, if you're in a basically close to the tropics or in a warmer place where he's actually moved, and you've got, you know, more UV and you're depleting deuterium, and, you know, it's, you know, you probably can have those indiscretions of sugar. And I go, it's not optimal. And we've got all these other things, there's other factors in our environment. It's probably best to, you know, to do the, you know, our sleep, those things, do those optimally, and then we can sort of mitigate some elements, you know, with earthing, with, you know, those sort of things, to try and actually reduce the load of damage being done to us at a cellular level. You know, that's all we can do, you know, guys. Otherwise we go bush, you know. I mean, I think you know, but is that a solution for all of us? I don't think so. Well, that's a really hard, because there are genetic differences between people. These points, there are all sorts of elements. I mean, even in the carnivore diet, things like dairy and stuff like that, different people react in a different way. There is, you know, things like in the environment that can impede as well. Stress. There can be toxins in the environment, like mold and stuff like that, that can actually have an effect as well. So it's like using a reset point and all that. I think pulsatile effect is a good thing. Sometimes, you know, also going really high on your calories to sort of ramp up your metabolic rate and then drop it, you know, energy at this high metabolic rate. So you can play games like that with your body. Don't get it in. What usually happens, a lot of people start getting into a rut where they just do the same thing every day, and the body just adapts, you know. So if you really want to break the adaptation is the easiest way. That's the only really thing that I've actually found myself, the strategy, just body and saying, well, I'm going to do something nasty to you and force you to basically change your behavior or the way you metabolize or the way you, so that's usually, like you eat a whole lot of things and then you drop to fat quite a bit, carbs to 0, and protein down to about 12%, and the body goes, fuck me, and then 15 kilos come off rapidly. So there are strategies, and I'll discuss that later. And there's also, there's also health implications. I mean, certain people can't do this and shouldn't do this. They may have a weak heart, like I had. I had to transition. I went through these different stages of a number of years of changing my diet, adapting, improving, and then trying like that. So people might be on medication. It could cause massive disruption inside them. It's, so we have to be very careful. Oh, I want to lose rapid weight. My metabolism is sort of stalled. You need to really know all these other things. Where's your health? What medication do you take? There's a lot of things. Just talking blindly like that about just reset points, it can be risky. And I would say, if you want something really step by step and stuff like that, and you've actually stalled, go and chat to Bart. Go to his Patreon. Go to there. He knows a lot about human physiology. He knows about a lot of sports, medicine. He's done all this sort of stuff, and I don't have the time to do it. I've got a day job, so I'll do and stuff like that, which you can use, but I don't do consultancies. I don't do any of that sort of stuff. I don't have the time to do any of that sort of stuff. Best person to go to if you really have like your weight sort of stopped, and you may have a number of issues. I don't know what your environment's like, stress levels, toxins in your environment, all sorts of things. You need somebody that understands this sort of stuff, has the time to spend and go through with you, and so it's not something that just can be answered by me now without any data to go on, because I'm going blind. I don't have your medical history. I don't have your data. I don't have your set weight. I don't have any information about you. And please don't tell me. Go and have a private consultation with somebody that can help you. I know, thank God that nobody's knocking at the wall. Okay. It's actually a fresh cheese that you actually make yourself. Okay. Yeah. I mean, my father used to make it. He still occasionally makes some feta cheese and stuff like that of his own, and goat cheese. So straining all the water out and stuff like that, hangs it up, and some of the tradition is salt and actually putting a layer of olive oil around it to prevent anything getting into it. So, different. I don't mind yogurt. I actually do enjoy yogurt. I try and get goat yogurt. It's really hard. It's not quite tasty. Yeah, it's one of these foods. Yeah. Well, hope you enjoy it. You'll have to answer that too. Hold on. I'll actually show you. Bring that up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So there it is. So it's that place there. So it's at the top of Criterion Street. There's the post office, the second central post office, which is in Bathurst Street. So it's sitting right there. That's that old hotel, the city, you know, that's part of the university now. So it's right there. It's, you know, pretty much in the other direction you're going, that's Bathurst. In the other direction you're going towards Liverpool Street. So it's at the top of Criterion Street. And that's their opening times. So 9 o'clock in the morning to 5:30 on weekdays, and Saturday it's 10 to 3:30 p.m. Okay. Yeah, there are. I mean, I don't mind some sour. I actually prefer sour and salty more than sweet. So, you know, it's actually even in my genetics. I actually found I've got a few things which are good, a few things that aren't. But anyway, we can't have everything. And yeah, I sort of do like. So even when my cream goes a bit sour, I put it in my coffee. It doesn't bother me. You know, it's just, yeah, it's a quiet taste. I bet it is. Doing this. Yeah, there's different cultures you can use out there. You know, there's even bacterial cultures. Some of the lactobacillus stuff that actually you can combine in there, like let's say, you know, increase in sperm production. You know, I'll do a video on that as well. There's all sorts of stuff, you know, out there. You can change the sort of, you know, your sort of gut microbiome, or make modifications to it, or crowd out certain things. So there's a lot of things. I think if you're having a species appropriate diet, it's less of an issue. It's something that they're trying to extricate themselves. A reaction to something is usually the cause. There may be something in their diet, even though they've changed a lot of things that they react to. They've got some reactivity to. I had certain plants that I used to react a bit, were more reactive towards. So yeah, look, it's so, even vegans have become very catabolic. They lose a lot, and they've still got, you know, they really just, you know, but that's probably because they're so far away from species appropriate diet that they just react to all these things, and they've damaged their gut so much. Because basically, remember what we said earlier, skin, MMPs, you know, are everywhere. You know, collagen is one of our key proteins throughout our whole body, and makes up most of our structure. So, you know, if you're basically having a species inappropriate diet, you're not getting enough of those fat soluble vitamins. You're going to have lots of problems. Both, remember, your gut is the inside skin. It's not the inside of your body, it's the inside skin. You know, it's like this. It's just reversed. That's what your gut is. So, you know, like bacteria on here, there's bacteria in there and all sorts of things, but it's the inside. It's only when it gets past that gut barrier into your bloodstream or through the lymphatic system, then does it get in your body. Before that, it's like the inner out, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so basically, most people usually, if they get onto a species-appropriate diet, most of these things resolve. It may be certain reactivity to something, you know, in the end. Now, put up other people's comments as I'm moving through. What I had was something similar to a CAC scan. So what they did was it's actually more than the CAC scan, because CAC scan only tells you, I already know I've got calcium. I haven't removed it all. So it's not going to tell me anything that basically, you know, this scan is actually more intrusive. You're actually not a couple of minutes in there. You're in there for about 40 minutes. And what it does is it actually scans, it looks at the heart in real time. It creates like an image, like a video, as it's actually all these different, as it's pumping, and they're looking at the actual arteries opening and close, you know, the sort of, it's the normal reaction to pump fluids through, you know, the blood fluids. So they're actually looking, are they performing normally, or are they clogging up, or they've got, you know, streaks and stuff like that. Because it's not only high C and not have streaks and have very stable angina. So CAC scores tell you you've got a problem, but they don't tell you how bad it is or stuff like that, or how good the functioning is, stuff like that. So yes, they're a predictor, but they're, you know, they're still, you know, I can't say it's private, you have to pay for it. Why am I going to pay for it? I know I've got still some stuff. I've got some regression. You know, I go through the public system and have these more detailed scans, which are much better, because I actually can see, are those arteries in good nick? That's what I want to know, you know. So out of that doesn't really tell me anything, because sometimes people can have lower CAC scores but have more unstable angina, you know, unstable plaques, and they can be a hell of a lot more dangerous. So CAC score is a good thing to find whether you've got a problem, but it doesn't tell you everything, and it's not as detailed or precise to exactly. So it was actually far more important to know exactly what's happening inside me, you know, and how that heart is functioning. Am I in the safe zone? That's what I wanted to know. You know, is there regression? Yes. Are there those arteries that they put in the bypass? They did. Are they clear? Yes. That's the most important. I know that, you know, because if they were in any way clogging up a bit, I'd be shitting myself. I'd be bloody shitting myself. So I'm glad that the results were good and I don't have to worry about anything. But I think it's not really the diet or the keto diet or all these other diets that I did, you know, because when I stopped the 10 years ago, I actually didn't do any of these sort of diets. I sort of, for a while there, I sort of went and stayed with Dad for a while, and, you know, he nursed me for about 6 months, told me what an idiot I was, and he said, you know, you should be eating like me, you know. So, you know, I pretty much threw out all the seed oils, even though I didn't even know then that they were so bad and toxic, and sort of adopted, because Dad was olive oil and a lot of dairy. It was very dairy rich and all that, and low carb dairy. So it was a high fat diet that he put me on, and because that's what my father does, you know. So I've even measured him once when he was actually doing a bit of fasting and eating that way. And he even had some ketone bodies. So we're talking about I've done stuff on the Mediterranean diet and debunking a lot of the shit and crap, and you know, some of the differences between the past and you know, the ones that I did with Bart, the chats, and you can see it all there. But yeah, you know, look, at the end of the day, I did that, went paleo, then went low fat, low carb. Then I did keto, low carb, and I sort of discovered carnivore, and then I decided carnivore. I was having problems with plants. I'm LA and ALA, you know, the omega 6s and So I've got no problems like that. I never had any plant reactivity or anything, no salicylate problems. I've got no problems because there's a very heavy salicylate. The Mediterranean diet is very high in salicylates. Don't have any of those sort of problems whatsoever. For me, it was just basically the seed oils that I was cooking with for many years. Damage. As I said, I consumed some sugar, some refined sugar like everybody, but not to the extreme level that some people do, like cookies and all that. I hated that that's just crap, For me, it was just basically potatoes and fish and stuff like that being cooked in seed oils, and that's what I was doing. It was the seed oils that was causing all the damage, all the reactive oxygen species, juice, the mitochondria and the cell membranes inside my body. So I don't have a sweet tooth. I actually don't enjoy a lot of sweetness. I grab a lemon and just get into it like that. I prefer sour things. So that sweet tooth wasn't my problem. That's why I've never had high triglycerides, or basically high blood sugar. That's why my cardiologist, when I first turned up 10 years ago, he said, "You're a 5% anomaly." And I said, "Great. That doesn't help me, does it?" Well, I did actually just use salt, sea salt. That's all. No potassium. No, actually, occasionally I did use potassium, but as like a cooking agent. It's called which is high in potassium. So you get a potassium, and every second day. So I didn't get too wound up into it. I didn't have any keto flu. I think I didn't have keto flu because I went from high-fat Mediterranean, paleo, then low carb and all that. So I'd already been at that sort of lower. So transition to keto was much easier. I think most people get a lot of these problems is because they're going from a sad diet and they've got a lot of water retention, the water logged, and then they just drop, flushing out everything, and that's what happens. So, and I've known like guys at work that have tried it because I've told them do keto and stuff like that. And they were in the toilet every now and then. They might as well start living in the toilet for a couple of days until they can get all that fluid out. I never had really a lot of that sort of stuff because, as I said, I sort of, mine wasn't so much some things in the diet, seed oils that are, my father said when we in the 80s, he said, "That's crap. I wouldn't use that. It's tasteless. It has no taste to it whatsoever." But my mother got into it. It's probably one reason why she had a heart attack at 76 and her brother still was living up to 93. Mum used to use it, and I used to use it because I was a tight ass and I basically was cheaper. Called me an idiot for using it and said it's tasteless and all that. And he was right, but it wasn't only tasteless; it was poison. So yeah. Anyway, sorry, got on a rant, bit of a sidetracked. A lot of the stuff is an N of one, in that regard. And I mean, all we can do is just try different things, different combinations, and see what works. Talk to each other, So yeah, I agree. Actually, the energy. A lot of people complain about ketosis. I was just basically, actually, at work, I was so damn productive when I was in ketosis. I mean, God, I was doing 2 FTEs, the amount of work that, one person was doing, I was doing double. I was impressing my managers. They couldn't believe it. They go, "Fuck, there's a new Harry here." So for some people, they get really these, I mean, beautifully. See, Pim? Finally. Yep, finally, I know. Yeah, look, I mean, you have to remember the nice thing about gluconeogenesis, demand driven. You're not going to get any spikes, you're not going to get any issues. Um, it's unnecessary. You look, there's a whole lot of populations out there that were on high protein diets and high animal based diets, and they had longevity well. And not only the numbers, the only reason it was the high infant mortality. It's just, because of their environment. They were just more vulnerable, and young kids are more vulnerable, and older people are more vulnerable. But I look at North American Plain Indians. Some of the chiefs were 70 and over, and they could mount a horse and the battle. You try and get it, let alone a 50-year-old would struggle. My age, So when it comes to species appropriate diet, I mean, there's a lot of evidence out there in the archaeology and a lot of the stories and all that show quite clearly that, you want to degenerate a population, make them shorter, smaller, weaker, just feed them, it always works. That's why in the past, the were really short, and all the lords and all that were all tall and big, and they lived longer. Thanks. Damn, we got through a few questions. God, it's nearly 3 hours. Well, guys, there's nothing new. Anybody last minute? Hold on. Oops, there is a few more. I'll just quickly cycle through them. You're welcome. Thanks, mate. Good night, mate. Yeah, I'll be doing next Sunday at the same time. So oxalate juice, but I do enjoy it. I'm sort of lucky in a sense. I've got a SNP that actually allows me to metabolize caffeine 4 times faster. So it clears out of my system within an hour and a half, where other people take 6 hours. So I can have in 6 hours like 4 coffees, and it will clear out in the same amount of time that it would clear out somebody else with one. And that's the difference. That's what used to be an alcoholic, as my sister said. And even she probably has the same gene. She can, and she's a small little thing, and she can still drink anybody under the table. Even me, unfortunately. So yeah. So if you got the SNPs, a lot of Mediterranean, the coffee, the Northern Europeans, it sort of doesn't agree with them. A lot of people in parts of Asia, the northern part, like Chinese and all that, doesn't agree with them. Just unfortunately, unlucky, I mean, they've got an advantage with choline synthesis, but they don't, So I mean, it's a bit like that. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to say which ones, and sometimes people it's caffeine, so it's like decaf, and it's sort of they react, So I think if you don't react problematically to it, and you've got a very low oxalate diet generally, you don't have any oxalate issues you're dealing with currently, probably less of a problem. I mean, we're not Puritans, we're not Puritans in that regard. Yes, species appropriate diet, but we've also used plants in the past to basically as for hormesis, for basically to as pharmaceuticals, as natural pharmaceuticals. Let's not forget, most of the pharmaceuticals out there are natural things that were stolen from indigenous people. you know. So you know, a lot of the, you know, like the Apples of the world and all that stole a lot of the inventions that we, the taxpayers, paid for, and then made products. You know, so you know, nothing new there in that regard. But look, if you're fine with it, it doesn't in any way. I don't. Yeah, because it does also have salicylates and stuff like that. So, you know, people do react to different things. And I know that even like coconut oil, certain people try it and they go, oh, why am I getting these reactions? It's usually the salicylates in that. So, you know, and when they do check, they find they have a salicylate, you know, sensitivity. So it's those sort of things you need to sort of check. So is it for you? Don't know. Can't answer that. Look, I think if you're eating a species appropriate diet, your body generally will do far better. I mean, a lot of people just taking out gluten usually notice their arthritis, their, you know, a lot of these sort of issues that they had, like pains in their joints and all that, literally goes away or reduces substantially. So, you know, anyone reacting negatively to ancestral foods, it's only all these other ones that have been domesticated and brought into our diet 11,000 years ago. So, you know, something that we've been consuming for 3 million years, I think we're pretty adapted to it by this stage. And not only us, even the chimps. You know, if anybody who's seen my thing on the chimps and eating a ton of meat a year that I did with Bart, you haven't seen it. You know, so you know our origins are meat based. So vegetards don't know what they're talking about. They're just a bunch of charlatans and just filling the internet with misinformation. Thanks, mate. A lot of people probably you know just that if it's not working for you, why do it? You know, if it's causing you a lot of issues, you know, it's like anything. You know, some people react to eggs, and it can be an issue. Like dairy can be an issue. If you don't react badly, not an issue. Exactly. You know, people from Europe do have salicylate sensitivities. Problems. I mean, I think the Swedes 97% resistance. I don't know about the Finns. I can't tell you, but you know, but a lot of them, Scandinavian people do have a lot of salicylate sensitivities, and you know, I'm going, why the hell are you consuming coconut oil, you know, or anything coconut based? You know, like a lot of things, it's again, you know, or it's like avocado. Why are you consuming these, which are not, you're not adapted to them? You know, you're just basically creating reactions and pain for yourself. Yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down again. You know, how does it affect you? You know, you got to ask yourself and be honest with yourself. You know, I mean, if you don't, you could, the only person you can be truly honest with is, you know, and I think when you really sit down and try things, and I don't like the sort of terminology a lot of people, especially the vegetarians, call the carnivore diet an elimination diet. It's not. It's an ancestral diet. You know, it's the ultimate ancestral diet. People would come across a mammoth, they'd kill it, and they'd gorge on it for days. You know, so we're very much a scavenger carnivore. and we've got a low pH, and we're focused on that, and all the archaeological evidence shows that, you know, it can't be. And analysis data is there of nitrogen 15, all the information. It's 3 million years of bones and teeth that have been analysed, especially a lot of the good work that's been done by the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig, Germany, you know, on those sort of things, isotope analysis. You know, I've spoken to Bart about this sort of stuff in the past, you know, so the is that, you know, our foundation food, you know, fish, chicken, or whatever else. These are our foundation foods. Then it's things like eggs, dairy. Do you have an adaptation to it? Are you not you don't have an issue in terms of sensitivity? Because egg is a very good, actually, after whey, it's actually really one of the most highest. It's even higher bioavailable than egg. So it's really good. If you, this is why the old bodybuilders used to use eggs, a lot of eggs, for the reason. So, you know, steak and egg diets are perfect. But, you know, if you react to the eggs, you know, so there will be those sort of sensitivities between different populations. I know the Italians, compared to the Greeks, have far more sensitivity. You know, I mean, we consume just as much dairy as basically the Swiss. You know, in terms of milk consumption, sometimes we even pass the Swiss. I mean, I can't remember which year. I know 2017 they were slightly ahead of us, but I think the year before, was it the year before that we were slightly ahead of them. So, I mean, not all Mediterranean are the same. Okay, Greece is very mountainous, doesn't have, you know, most people lived in the mountainous regions and, you know, had a dairy culture from ancient times, you know. Yeah, it's just, you know, but animals adapt. There are animals out there that eat whales. They don't have big claws or big teeth, and they still eat. A number of them consume a lot of krill and a lot of animal products. And there's plenty of other animals in nature that actually, you know, their adaptations, tool use. Even some animals actually have some level of tool use. We're not the difference is we can culture transmit information over time. They can't, you know, where they can do tool use and they can teach how to use a tool, but we can transmit major culture through our songs, our legends, our vocal cords that communicate this sort of stuff in a far more complex way. And that's what makes us different from other animals. So, you know, yeah, it's like all their arguments, you know, they're just one ridiculous thing after another. You know, the isotope analysis does not lie. You can basically say, all these animal bones, you know, they sort of just appeared there magically, or all these tools. No, they were actually used for other purposes, cutting leaves. You know, people can come up with all sorts of crazy notions about, you know, what. One thing you can't ignore is isotope analysis. You know, when you look at isotope analysis and you look at the N, in particular N15, nitrogen 15, in the actual skeletal of these hominins, you know, 3 odd million years, they were hyper-carnivore. That's what they were. That's what it shows. They had very high levels, where herbivores have very low levels of nitrogen 15 isotopes. So as you move up the carnivory, I mean, we have even higher than Arctic foxes, wolves, and all sorts of other predatory animals. We were, up until 11,000 years ago, super and hyper. And that is our biological, you know, and that is indisputable. So they ignore that deliberately. So they come up with all these other strawman arguments, and so that's how they operate. So basically, you have to go for the jugular with these people. Don't be nice. Go for the jugular and say, well, what are your arguments? Well, what's your evidence for that? What's my I can basically take that tooth or that bone to any laboratory, anywhere in the world, and they will come up with the same result. And that is replicatable truth. That's not basically some speculation or some basically, possible confounded variable. It's clear in the bone. Something you can deny, unless you're a stupid vegetard. Yeah, I do as well for choline. It's one of the great sources. I have anywhere between 4 to 8 eggs a day, depending, when I'm not fasting, that is, when I'm eating. So, yeah, eggs are a great source. Not an issue, So, people have different issues. Oh, it's the eggs, but it's not actually the eggs. It could be something else. My brother-in-law, he basically has he's been diabetic, and we're studying to coax him towards a carnivore diet, or we're studying to change his sort of eating patterns. And he got this sort of he was consuming eggs, so he thought he was reacting to eggs. And I said, fasting? He said, yeah, now and then, but not many. And then basically he tried liver, which he had consumed in the past. We knew he had no problem with liver, and he had the same problem. And we worked out what it was. There's a phrase it's called bile diarrhea. On very high when they shift over, certain functions of their liver are such that they basically they'll take that and actually overproduce bile salts, which basically creates this diarrhea effect. So when they just eating muscle meat, they don't get it. But when they actually consume a lot of rich, they can actually use milk thistle to. You can also use alipoic acid as well. I'm going to do a bit of a video on that in protocol, and to cover that sort of thing. So that's a future video. Anyway, guys, I think we're getting close to 3 hours now, so I think we'll call it I really appreciate you guys turning up and supporting my channel. I mean, if I don't get the support, please subscribe and please tell your friends. I'll be back on next week at the same time. I'll try and be a bit more organized. I'll have a better microphone as well, so I'll be able to basically clearer voice. So it's been great. I really enjoyed it. Didn't think I enjoyed it as much as I did. And thanks for basically turning up and supporting this channel. I appreciate it. And have a nice, the remainder of your weekend, or I'll just put these up. Thanks, mate. You're welcome. You're welcome, mate. Oh, did he? Okay, I need to watch it then. Yep, I'll have to check it out. Yeah, there's actually some research that covers like bile dysfunction and stuff like that, and liver dysfunction. I mean, I had issues with fatty liver years ago, and I actually used pathways that actually affect, and that gallstones and stuff like that. So I had to learn a lot of this sort of stuff myself to basically sort out my gallstone issues from high carbohydrate, fucking leafy vegetable shit diet, and these issues that I was having as well. So yeah, but I didn't think of it with my brother-in-law, and then eventually when I thought he just reacted he said, oh look, I said, yeah, I thought it was the actual eggs that was actually causing the problem, and then when I knew that he'd consumed the past, I said, nah. Eventually, it's I realised it was, and I think there are other people on the internet as well that have actually spoken about it. I've actually seen other material, and some ex-vegans as well that have actually spoken about it, that they had issues, and it was causing this bile diarrhea type thing. So it was quite interesting, but I'll have to. He's probably nuanced it and done quite a lot more research than I've done, and he probably knows more about it as well. So he's a really cluey bloke. So if you're not subscribed to him, go and subscribe. He's a really smart cookie. I'm subscribed to him because he really knows his shit. Well, thanks to all of you. Okay. Good night, guys. We've gone beyond. Anyway, good night and thanks for being here. See you next week. Bye.